Grow Great is a city government leadership podcast with Lisa Norris and me, Randy Cantrell. Each week we share insights, experiences, and wisdom to help you and your leadership grow great. Our website is growgreat.com. Episode 2203, Leading versus Managing. Leading versus managing, that's the subject today. The distinction that we make on this podcast, Lisa and I both together, and we agree on this, is leadership is influence. It's a focus on others, and it is doing for others what they can't do for themselves. Managing, well, first of all, leadership is people. Managing, our worldview is you don't manage people. You manage the work that the people do. So we're managing the process. We're managing the operations. We're managing the to-do list. We're managing all the tasks. We're managing the output produced by the people. So today's conversation is one to kind of pull back and peel that onion a little bit more of leadership versus management. Right?
That's right. And the whole theory around this and the challenge to each of us, you can't live in management and still have a high performing team. You've got to be a leader. This is probably the number one issue from an HR perspective and just as a mentor generally that I coach on. There's a couple things that we find, at least in city government, that's very, very common. And that's on any technical person that's really great and expert in their job that gets promoted into leadership, whether that's supervisory, whether that they're moving from a senior something into a division manager role. Very, very hard transition often to go from being a technical expert to a leader. They typically go from a technical expert to managing. They're doing the same things and managing the same function.
That's why we're promoting these people, and that's true in the public and the private sector.
Absolutely.
Right? We promote the person because they're the best at that task, and so we think, well, they're the natural one to promote and make boss.
Yeah, and then the challenge becomes, well, I don't know why they aren't doing XYZ. I don't know why people are turning over. I don't know. They're really great at what they do. They could have a very healthy team but they're not as high performing as I believe they can be. And it's trying to teach them you've got to lead your people. Focus on doing for them what they can't do for themselves, like you've mentioned. Bringing out the best in them, growing them. I remember one time we had a leader. This has been better than 10 or 15 years ago, and very, very large department in our city. And they said, we don't have anybody to go into a supervisory role, and there's greater than 40 people underneath them. And I said, it's a frontline job. And I said, what do you mean? Of the 40 people, there's nobody that you see that can move into super. And they're like, nope, we need to go to the outside. And so that discussion brings light that we've got to grow our people beneath us to take our jobs. Some people can be threatened by that. I never believe we should be threatened by that we are doing a great job if we can grow them. Right. So that is a continual challenge we have. And it's not that people intend to do it. Like you said, we hire the experts that are really great at their job. And then we put them in the role and said, go forth.
Yeah.
go at it, go lead. Yeah, we don't tell them how to do it.
Right.
We don't think about
we don't think about the fact that we've changed their role. The very thing that they were excelling at, we've now said, okay, we don't want you to do that anymore, but we want you to oversee everybody else that does that work.
Right.
Well, and there's a lot of micromanaging that goes on in large part because of that.
Well, and I lived in that role, at one point, and yourself doing the checklist. I was coming in every day. What's on the to-do list? Because we always have more to do. I'm sure many cities are like this. I never get through my 15 items to get done today. I might hit one of them because of all the things coming in that are fires, right? That's just that's the way we operate.
Well, it started out with 15, and before you turn around, there's 25 on there.
Yes, that's correct. And so it's all managing your time. But the challenge is I was focused on coming in the door, working the to-do list, making sure the team's working the to-do list, getting out the door to get back to my family, right? And under high stress, that's where my natural instinct was, is crank stuff off. And I was great at cranking stuff off the list. People knew they could rely on your A players, right? I can give them more because they will get it done. But at some point we had to shift, and in my recent years, you helped me with that. I was just in a difficult place, lots just overloaded at the moment, short staffed. We just had a lot of unusual things happening all at the same time, lots of fires happening. And it was a difficult time in my career at that moment. I'm good at what I do, but the challenge was seeing the clarity around it. I knew what I needed to do, but you just kind of feel like you're just constantly in this state of flux.
Well, but let's take a momentary side detour and talk about that, because we live in this Instagram world, right? I mean, let me show you at the exotic location, and my whole life
Right.
is this Instagram moment. And unless you're a Kardashian, it's just not true.
Right.
I get that they may live in utopia, but the rest of us live in the real world, and
Right.
we got real problems and situations. Would that everybody's career, yours wasn't, mine wasn't, this hockey stick growth, right? I mean, this trajectory that we got on this rocket ship that was
That's right.
is our career, and we went straight up, and there was never a rocky moment, there was never a valley. It's just been one mountaintop peak moment after another mountain. That's just not the reality of it. So, so you had this circumstance, this moment in time, and we've all got them. And I'm sure there are people that are watching and listening to us, and you may be in one of those right now.
That's right.
You may not be at the mountain. You may not have summited, the peak and planted your flag. You may be hoping to get there. Wherever you are in the journey is wherever you are.
Right.
Just
That's
know
right.
this, it's not going to last. Whether you're at the
Yes.
top or whether you're in the valley, it's just not going to last. It's not the way the world works. But in those moments where you're focused on that to-do list, who are you thinking about the most?
Me.
There's the
I'm focused.
problem.
Yeah. You're focused on yourself and what I have to get done instead of others and what we could collaboratively and collectively do as a group, which is way more than I can get done myself. And I had to learn the shift. I call it the shift. I had to learn. I think, looking back, and I've given this example, like you've given your story, we've talked about the stories we tell over and over and over. But the one story that I've told and I've helped other leaders see, we don't intend to be the one that's just doing the task and getting them knocked off the plate and not genuinely leading our troops to become better themselves and do the work for themselves. My goal was, they have so much to do and we're short staffed, I can't possibly ask them to do anything else. And so I was taking things on, thereby not training them. So they weren't as self-sufficient as they could have been. And ultimately the term I used, and you helped me see, was really, are you benefiting the team? And the answer was no. I was crippling them. They weren't becoming any better through this. Everybody was trying to literally survive it, right? It was survival. And what I found is shifting the trajectory. Instead of we were flat and we were just keep rocking along being flat, we were getting the work done. It was getting done, but it wasn't at the benefit of the team. And so ultimately I shifted and said, here's the things we need to get done. I don't know your load. Who can take on what? And we started, it was crazy. In short staff, people were volunteering. I can take that. I'd like to learn. Can you teach me? And I had to shift my thinking to, okay, it's going to be hard because now I have to take time to teach. But the benefit of teaching them, they then taught somebody else. And it was a trickle effect. And now we're to the point, then we've learned ways to better do that, to better teach, to record like this.
I had an HR professional when I was a young person, a young leader, taught me that, and this is where, we're going back to the late 70s, but the world hasn't changed because people haven't changed. That by and large, we lose people from the workplace I know that city government is especially concerned about engagement. Lots of resources go to trying to measure employee engagement in every city that I have ever served, and rightly so. But I was taught as a young man by an HR professional, an old head in the game, that people leave because they don't see where they fit. They don't have a clear understanding of how they make a difference. And as leaders, when we get focused solely on the output and all of our efforts are spent on the output, then we rob our people of the very thing that will keep them engaged, that will have them engaged, that will make them get up in the morning and wanting to come to work. Is if they don't see where they fit or where they are able to make a contribution, because we are so focused on our own contribution, because we just need to get this done. We just need to get that to-do list done. That we think that's the game. Mm-hmm. And as leaders, it's so not the game. The game is the collective. Can we get the collective output up? You mentioned a leader who you were looking for somebody that can fill a role, and there's 40 people in the team. Well, I don't care if 40 people are average or even below average. 40 people are going to produce more output than one rock star.
That's right.
It's just pure math. You mentioned in the prior episode, where we kind of pull the curtain back on our own lives, getting your first job at EDC because, your parents are like, you need to be out on your own. You need to get at, that's the whole back. The parents that don't want the kids to grow up, I don't care where they're coming from. I don't care if it's love-based or anything else. It still has a crippling effect. If we raise children who are unable to be independent, we also cripple employees who are unable to carry on without us, right, or without us micromanaging every step of the way. Tell your fish. Give us
my theory.
Yeah, give us your fish theory, we'll call it.
Well, and I've got a picture out there. I don't know if for those that are watching in our box, I don't know if we can load it, but
yeah, we'll post it. We'll post it. Just go to today's episode on our website, growgreat.com, and you can see this photograph.
But there, my whole theory, you hear, I call it give a girl a fish or teach them how to fish. Right. Yeah. And my grandpa taught me how to fish. So I'm set for a lifetime. I can feed myself, my family, everybody else. But if I'm the only one doing the fishing, or if you just hand me a fish, it doesn't last. I need to be the one producing the fish and finding the fish. You give me one, it's only going to feed me for today. Right. And so that's the theory behind it. And as you guys see the picture to give it in your mind, I told Randy, I said, I got a great picture for this, my theory. And we were, for those that have listened to the earlier episodes about us, when we pulled back the curtain, I love to fish and hunt, and we go anywhere where I can do that. And I'm at our 25th anniversary at the lake, and I get a business call, and I'm literally out on the dock in my shorts and t-shirt. And my husband, he's just looking at me, and I have 2 poles in the water. Both of them have fish on them. I'm holding both lines. I'm reeling them in with my hand, with my phone in my ear and my shoulder holding the phone. And I'm reeling both lines. And my husband's just shaking his head like, you should not be answering the phone right now. And so I unhook the fish while I'm still coaching and giving guidance on the phone to the work employee that's having an issue. And I'm taking the fish off the hook, and I hold both fish up while I'm talking on the phone. And he's like, can you talk to them later? He's mouthing it to me. I'm like, no, I got this.
Right. This is easy.
Yeah, this is nothing. 2 fish, 2 lines. Just be thankful the third one's not got a hit.
Right.
So anyway, but that's my theory is we've got to teach our people to fish. We need to pass that on so they can feed themselves and feed our team and feed our city. If we're not doing that, you're really not doing it justice for them or for you and what you could potentially have. And it's a high performing team. All of those things, leading is going to lead you to a high performing team. And we'll talk about our leadership recipe as we go along that has these certain ingredients that can help with that and help towards it, but they're required in order to be a really great leader. I call it going from average to awesome. That's the whole theory. Many of you have read the book Good to Great. It's the average to awesome. You can sit in the average and you can sit in the good and you'll be okay. But is that really where you want to sit as a city? And I think it all comes down to if we can teach effective leadership and really how to do that well, and then they have to apply what they've learned, which is the other part of what we teach. You can't just listen and do nothing about it. If you do nothing, it's only going in your ears and in your head, and there's no output, right? You have to apply what you've learned. But if they do that, I think that will lend well to the cities and leadership, and then the culture will get right. If there's a culture issue, the leadership will get right, and leaders start feeding off of one another. When there's positive leadership, really good leaders, even if they're green, they're gonna go to the other great leaders because they want to emulate them, right? So it becomes, I call it a feeding frenzy. You really want to be like that, and you start hiring for those, and then they start hiring for those, and their supervisors start hiring for great people, and it just feeds itself for the
Well,
lifetime.
it can be really difficult to start. You're fortunate in that Grand Prairie is a high performing culture, that was established years ago by leadership. It continues to be perpetuated and built upon and improved by current leadership. But the constraint, so that we don't just beat ourselves up, the person who's got the great technical chops and we promote them up because they had that technical prowess. And now we're changing the whole game. The whole judgment system is changing because I'm a worker bee. How am I judged? Well, I'm judged by how good my work is. And now I've got some leadership, some oversight role, and we can make a distinction. Leadership doesn't have anything to do with a title. It helps. There's make no bones about it. It helps when leadership has authority, when leadership can flatten the learning curve, when leadership can get the problems out of the way. It absolutely helps, but it's not mandatory. There are plenty of bosses that are pathetic leaders. And there's plenty of great leaders that just don't happen to be boss. But if you can capture both, it's great. But all of a sudden we've changed the game. So I'm great in the IT department. I produce great work, whatever it may be. And now I'm in charge of work. Now I'm judged completely differently. And we're doing these people a disservice when we don't give them the tools they need to be proficient, at this next level.
And let me add something there, Randy.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just pulling it up. There was a great quote that I found, as we're doing these, and like I said, I love to learn and I love to grow, but I found this quote that kind of obviously follows this from Cheryl Sanders. And it says, leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that impact lasts in your absence, which is exactly what we're talking about, is carrying on well beyond us. If we can do that for our cities, and we've created this culture of people hiring great, right? And leading and teaching them to lead and differently than teaching them to manage. If we focus on those things, it really can make an impact well beyond you. My staff knows, I always say, I hope I just impacted at least one. I made an impact. My goal is always impact and influence on somebody, that they became better because of something that we have done. That's my legacy that I want to leave. It's not about how many leadership programs I put into place or a curriculum I developed or a reward system. You know what I mean? It's about the people. I'm truly about making people the best versions of themselves, one person at a time. And I think that focus can carry us a long ways.
Well, and to your earlier point, I don't know, was it Mark Twain that said, after all is said and done, a lot more is said than done? We
Yeah.
want to practice these things. So one goal that I know we both have with this episode and every episode is actionable things. What can we do? But so much of this early stuff, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the term mindset, but for lack of a better one, it is mindset. It is to the point of this old HR mentor I had as a young leader. It is that worldview. It's how do you see yourself, and how do you see the contributions you make as making any kind of a difference at all? And it starts with that. And if we don't
Right.
get that right, I don't know of any particular way that we can help other people figure that out for themselves as well. And as leaders, it's why I focus a lot, as you well know, on the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we tell our staff, because we all get up in the morning trying to answer those questions. And if we can't answer those questions, we have a problem. We have a
That's right.
problem. And that's when turnover becomes way more the norm. When people come to work, they won't continue to come to work. And certainly, and we're seeing it in this environment, they absolutely will not come to work if they don't see that they're making a positive difference. Even if we feel like they are, but they can't see it, then we're not serving them well at all. Talk a little bit about, because I don't want our audience to get fixated that there is, I got to be this or I got to be that.
Right.
You and I have seen people that their personality, well, you and I are very aligned when it comes to philosophy, when it comes to our worldview of leadership,
Right.
but our personalities are very different. So for the audience that may think, well, okay, is this a one size fits all kind of an approach?
Hmm.
I mean, what would you say?
I I think we all want to be leaders. You talk about leaning into yourself, leaning heavily into who you are. You don't want to change your your basic. I kind of call it belief system. Of course, it has to fit the values of the organization you're working for, but I don't think every leader looks the same. There are different leaders. We all have different strengths that we bring to the table. We all are in different industries, but I think leadership as a whole, there are certain things that to be a great leader, you do have to have that we teach on: the humility, the curiosity. There are things we are going to teach on that will help you become a better leader, but we don't look the same. We don't act the same. I know great leaders completely different from me. We've talked in our past. Tom Hart was our longtime city leader, in public. I mean, in city government, more than 40 years. Recently retired. We've now got another great leader. Steve Dye came from a completely different background. He was a police chief for many, many years in different cities, and moved over into city management. Both extremely effective leaders, completely different. Both very good at what they do, completely different. Um, Different is okay. They still do things really well. Tom was high empathy and high compassion. Steve has got this amazing knack for communication, organization, working with council, collaboration. They both bring really great things to the table, but in completely different ways. And then my boss, Cheryl, she's our deputy city manager, budget finance background, very money driven, focus on mentorship, focus on growing her people. They're just all different personalities, and those are good. And I think honestly that further balances the team because they bring strengths in different areas. And I don't know if that answers your question, but to those listening and those watching, I would just tell you, don't make them look like you. Don't make them be like you. That's the worst thing you can do. Find out what they do well and make sure they're in we call it the right seat on the bus here in Grand Prairie. A lot of times we found people that are failing in their current role, and we try to look at what do they bring to the table. They're really great at X. Maybe they're not in the right seat on the bus, and we look for a spot that better fits them to align them. And we've had that over my 25 years here, has been amazing transformations of the people, because we just didn't have them in the right spot and they can't see it themselves. And it's your whole theory of serving them, helping them do what they can't not do for themselves. And sometimes I had a great example, don't mean to belabor the point, but we had an employee on our team still with us now. She was in benefits. We had an opening in classification compensation, which is where you pay them and fit them in the scale of what they should be doing about job titles. And I said, I think you'd be really great over here. She said, not interested. And I said, I want you to think on it. And let me tell you why I think you'd be great at this job. And she said, it's just too routine. It's just day in, day out. You're doing the same thing. I said, okay, true in part. But here's the part you don't know about. You get to solve the issues for our departments, our customers that we serve of every level in this organization. You get to listen to what their concerns are. You get the liberty to try to figure out, how do we make this work for them, and create things, create new positions. You're almost like a creative producer, essentially. How can I solve for it? Because I don't expect them to be cookie cutter. And I said, I think there's this creative part that you're really amazing at, and you've got this high aptitude for organizing and doing things efficiently and seeing the big picture versus this little niche. And she came back to me the next, I told her to sleep on it over the weekend and think about it. She came back and she said, I think I'm going to do it. And to this day, she has been in that role and just soared. I mean, she's now one of our managers, and it helped her see the light that she couldn't see for herself. But you got to be able to see that in your people, right? You need to know your people and know about them. So that was a long, very long story to a short question, Randy, but hopefully it gives perspective of our leaders out there listening. It doesn't matter if you're in public works. It doesn't matter if you're in fire or police, if you're the city manager, or if you're the crew leader, right? It doesn't matter the industry. You've got to see what the potential is for people. And that's where you grow them to what their potential is, not where they are today. And then you need to have self-awareness around you and where you need to improve. Because so often it's the whole theory of looking at this splinter in your neighbor's eye and you've got a plank in your own. Yeah. Right. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
No, and I completely agree. I think one of the big hurdles and the big challenges for people is the realization that the success or the failure of our people is our success and failure. As opposed to any jealousy or feeling like I need to micromanage. You and I both have raised kids, and they're going to make mistakes. I told my kids growing up, you're gonna mess up, you're gonna make mistakes. I just don't want you to make a mistake that you can't recover from.
That's exactly what we told ours.
Right.
That's right.
So, let's learn from it. Let's not repeat it. But I do think that the mindset of the leader is critical, in that we've got to get our worldview of ourself and our role, and maybe more accurately said, our sense of self-importance. We've got to be able to look at that differently. It's not that you're not important. You're critically important as a leader, but maybe not the way you think you are. It's not about, the whole world revolves around me, which is completely narcissistic. It's that I'm able to do for these people something that few other people, maybe nobody, can do. I mean, in your role as the HR director there, you've got a unique position. People in our audience, they've got a unique position. I don't care if you're low level, if you're mid level, or if you're upper level when it comes to your authority that you've got. I don't care what the budget amount is. I don't care what the head count is. If there is, and there are many of you that may be aspiring leaders. I mean, there's a whole lot of conversation in city government about emerging leaders.
That's
How
right.
can we get more
How can we
younger
grow them?
people?
Yep.
And how can we attract them? How can we retain them? How can we elevate and grow them? And the way that we have to do that is it begins with our own view. I call it default behavior. We've all got default behavior. And some of that default behavior is great and it works for us. Others not so much. But I do think that it begins with us. Here's kind of the contrary part of all this conversation when we're talking about leadership is we've got to be self-focused enough to get better ourselves.
That's right.
And that's not selfish. The age-old illustration is that all the moms on the airplane told, put that mask on yourself first. Don't put it on your child first. You think, well, that's not putting my child first. No, it is putting your child first because you are responsible for your child. So in the same vein as leaders, we kind of have to be self-focused on our own improvement, on our own growth, on making some shifts even in our own view. You talked about when you and I first started work, and I'll post it in the show notes, that the illustration of the old woman and the young girl, and our audience, you've likely seen this illustration or you've seen others like it. You hold it up and most people, they're going to see one or the other. One just leaps out at you and you just see it. And people can say, oh, well, I see a young girl. And I'll ask a client, well, do you see the old woman? They'll look and they'll go, I'll go, okay, right here's her nose. Right here's her jawline. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The minute you see it.
You can't unsee it.
No.
You can't unsee it.
No.
It's true.
But until you see it, it can be tough as nails to see it the first time, which is why we're all in this together. And it's what we hope to do with the podcast is we just hope to help people. My pet phrase is figure it out.
Yeah.
We all are just trying to figure this out. I'm not you, you're not me. Our approach might be different. Our communication might be a tad different. But yeah, to your point, there are some key ingredients that we've all got to bring to the party. The good news is we do. The good news is we bring these things. We have the capacity for these things. Now, we may not think that they're all that important, but if I'm going to make a cake or if I'm going to make rolls or bread, I got to have flour.
That's right.
I just got to have flour. Maybe I like wheat. Maybe you don't like wheat and you like we got to have flour. So there are these ingredients that we hope to bring forward and dive a bit more deeply into those that you've got to have them. Good news is you do. They're at your disposal. You just may not be using them as much. You may have undervalued them. You may have looked at it and you see the young girl. You don't see the old woman. And until you see the old woman, you're missing some key things that you need to see in a role of leadership. I don't know what took me off on that tangent, but
it's your focus is narrow. We've got to open the lens to a wide angle, right? To see everything and to better help and serve our people. And you talked about it, it's so interesting in leading and managing, and you and I spoke about this quite a bit. I want to remind our listeners and our viewers that leadership isn't just down, which is what often I need to coach up the people beneath me. As leaders, you can serve out to your peers and you can serve up to your leaders. And there are ways to do that really well that we can continue to serve one another. But again, Randy, you spoke about you've got to have self-awareness because all of us probably have something to improve. And we hope we can lend some insight and wisdom to that. And I'll close us with, again, we are here between Randy and I. We've got years and years and years of experience in a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different levels, and with a lot of different challenges over our careers with leadership. I feel we can help If you are in a situation right now and you're just not sure how to handle it and you're not sure what that looks like, please reach out to us and Randy will tell you how to do that. And we would love to offer some insight, and hopefully through the rest of these podcasts, you will continue to grow as well and grow your organizations to be great and your people to do the same.
The website is growgreat.com. There's a contact page over there. Feel free to use that. Lisa and I both will get the message and we will respond. So there's that. We appreciate you subscribing to the show. I got one big ask, and that is tell a friend. Tell a friend. This is a podcast about city government leadership. That is our focus. For those of you that aren't in that space, there are certainly principles we think that will transfer, but we are especially thankful and mindful of all the rest of you that are in city government, and we'd love to hear from you. growgreat.com. Thanks for watching and listening to Grow Great, a city government leadership podcast. For Lisa Norris, I'm Randy Cantrell. Be well, do good, grow great. The website is growgreat.com.